"This is the guy. He's the one spying on me." As soon as I got home, the woman shouted that. Suddenly, a young police officer appeared from nowhere.
"Caught you in the act,"
he said loudly, walking toward me. I was surprised by the sudden appearance of the officer, but quickly composed myself. I asked him calmly, "Do you even know who owns this house?" But before the officer could respond, the woman cut in sharply. "What are you talking about?" She glared at me and pressed the officer. "Just arrest her already. I saw her placing a camera right here." She pointed at a small camera I had set up, which the police officer immediately noticed. The officer seemed to believe her entirely.
"So you're the intruder, and the one filming illegally, huh?"
He played the footage from the camera, and everyone but me was shocked into silence. "My name is Rachel, 33 years old, and I work at a company. My husband Josh is 2 years older and works at the same company. Currently, we live together, just the two of us, without children. We met at work when Josh became my mentor after I was hired. Over time, we got closer, started dating, and eventually got married.
I'll always protect you, Rachel. You can count on me."
Lately, we've been talking about having kids, but we both prioritize work, so it's been pushed back. Both our parents are supportive of our decision to wait. My parents have always believed that children should come naturally and not be rushed. I was a bit surprised that Josh's parents also agreed with our decision. His mother even said there was no need to hurry, and his father nodded along, smiling. Deep down, I think both sets of parents want to see grandchildren, but we're grateful that they're respecting our wishes. Now, 4 years into our marriage, things have changed quite a bit. We moved into a bigger apartment closer to work to make commuting easier. But just when we thought things would get easier, Josh was transferred to a busier department. His workload increased, and soon enough, he was doing overtime and working weekends regularly.
"We won't be able to go on trips as much as we used to, huh?"
We still leave for work together in the mornings, but our return schedules are totally different. Although it's sad, I've gotten used to this routine. Our time together has decreased, and things have changed, but our relationship is still solid. We've hardly ever fought in the past 3 years we've been married. One day, as I returned home like usual, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It's hard to explain, but the house didn't feel like it was mine. The placement of things seemed different. Even the way the hairdryer and curling iron cords were wrapped seemed unfamiliar. Could someone else be in the house? That thought sent shivers down my spine, and I started checking the entire place. However, there were no significant changes, so I sighed and sat down on the couch. I looked around the house again, but everything seemed fine. The door was locked, and all the windows were shut. It was unlikely that anyone had entered. I figured I was just being paranoid. However, the feeling that things were out of place persisted in the following days. Since Josh and I leave for work at the same time, it couldn't have been him. Was someone else in our home while we were away? The fear gnawed at me until I finally decided to talk to Josh. Lately, when I come home, things aren't where they're supposed to be.
"That's impossible, Rachel."
Josh looked surprised as I explained what was happening. He probably thought I was imagining things. The hairdryer's cord was wrapped weird, and the cupboard was half open. I never leave it like that. My voice shook as I tried to explain, but Josh didn't take me seriously.
"Rachel, it's probably just your imagination. Maybe I wrapped the hairdryer without thinking."
"Josh, you don't even use the hairdryer in the morning." I reminded him that I was the last one to use it, but Josh just gave me a sympathetic smile and went to take a shower, then headed to bed. What should I do? I didn't have proof that someone was entering our home. That's why I had talked to Josh, hoping he'd notice something too and help me figure it out. But maybe Josh was just more oblivious than I thought. I even considered taking photos of the house before leaving each day. That's when something strange happened. After I started taking pictures, the feeling of something being off stopped entirely. The house seemed perfectly normal.
"Well, maybe it's a good thing nothing's changed,"
Josh said as he ate dinner after a long day of work. "Do you think so?"
"Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was just in your head."
He flashed me a playful grin. His lighthearted attitude irked me a bit, but maybe he was right. "Okay, I'm sorry. I must have been stressed."
"Yeah, you should stop taking pictures. It's probably just making you more tired."
Josh's words made me reflect on the situation. Maybe I had been overworked imagining things, but at the same time, it seemed strange that The weird feelings stopped the moment I started taking photos. It wasn't like I suddenly became less stressed. Maybe the intruders stopped because they realized I was onto them. If I mentioned this to Josh, he'd probably laugh it off as overthinking, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was right. After that, nothing happened for a while, and I finally started to relax. But then I was unexpectedly assigned to a month-long business trip. A whole month away from home?
That just means they think you're amazing,
Josh said, smiling kindly, but I wasn't happy about it. I didn't know what kind of work I'd be doing, and the idea of working in a new office with unfamiliar people made me anxious. But the main reason I didn't want to go was that it meant being apart from Josh for so long. We had never been apart for more than a few days since we got married. I don't want to be apart for so long.
I'll call you and send messages every day. I'll miss you too, Rachel.
He opened his arms, and I stepped into his embrace. We've always been close like this, so I told myself that when we reunited after the month apart, our bond would be even stronger. When the trip began, we kept our promise and talked on the phone every day. We shared our daily experiences and frustrations. Talking to Josh made me feel connected and happy. But after a few days, his calls became less frequent. At first, he called every 2 days, and then within a week, it dropped to once a week.
Work is really busy right now, and I'm exhausted. I'm sorry, Rachel.
Josh's voice sounded apologetic. I knew his department was crazy busy, and he barely had any free time. No, I'm sorry. You're doing your best. I felt guilty for making things about me, so I stopped contacting him as much to avoid adding to his stress. A few days later, I unexpectedly got some time off from work. I decided to use the break to go home and surprise Josh. He was still very busy, and we hadn't spoken much recently. I debated whether I should tell him or just surprise him by showing up, but I figured it wouldn't be fun if he wasn't home when I got there. So I sent a quick message. Hey, I got a day off and thought I'd come home for a bit. I hopped on the train and headed home. I didn't hear back from Josh, but I figured he was busy at work. However, when I arrived at the station near our apartment, I noticed several missed calls from him. I immediately called him back.
Rachel, where are you right now?
His voice was rushed and tense, which surprised me. Why do you ask? I was about to tell him I was at the station, but something about his tone made me hesitate.
Are you coming home?
Yeah, that's the plan. His response became even more panicked.
I need you to stay away from the house for now.
Why? I have a day off. What's the problem? I felt confused. It was my home too, so why was he telling me not to come back? As I mulled it over, I heard Josh speaking to someone in the background. Maybe he had taken time out of a busy meeting to call me. I see you're busy. Don't worry about me.
Wait, Rachel.
He called out, but I hung up the phone. Josh rarely called me during the day, so this behavior was strange. Was he calling just because he was surprised by my sudden return? Or was there something else he didn't want me to see? That thought stuck with me as I walked toward our apartment. Even though Josh was sending me several messages asking me to stay away, I ignored them. I thought it was odd that he was being so persistent. Finally, I replied, "Don't worry, I'll only be a few minutes." I put my phone away and opened the door to our apartment. As soon as I stepped inside, I froze. The scent of a woman's perfume filled the room, sweet and overwhelming. I wrinkled my nose and walked toward the living room. Women's clothes were scattered all over the floor. What the hell is this? Trembling, I searched the rest of the apartment. In the bedroom, I found more clothes, this time women's underwear. My heart sank as I realized what was happening. Someone had been in my home, and that someone had been here with Josh. My hands shook as I processed it all. All the pieces fell into place. Josh had been dismissive of my concerns about the house. He had panicked when I said I was coming home. And now, here was the undeniable evidence. Josh was cheating on me. I felt sick. I had to leave before Josh came back and found me here. I grabbed a couple of small cameras I had bought weeks ago when I first suspected something was wrong. Without a word, I quickly set them up in hidden spots around the house. Then, I left, feeling like I was going to collapse at any moment. I returned to my temporary apartment, trying to calm my racing heart. When I finally looked at my phone, I saw a flood of messages and missed calls from Josh.
Where are you? The house is a mess. Can you come home tomorrow instead? Why aren't you answering?
His messages were frantic, almost desperate. He definitely didn't want me home that day. I've got more work to do, so I won't be coming home after all. I texted him back, and he responded immediately.
Good. Just make sure you let me know next time before you come back.
It was like he was outright admitting that he had something to hide. The fact that he was so obvious about it made me laugh bitterly. Exhausted, I fell asleep soon after. The next morning, I contacted a private investigator to look into Josh's affair. I also planned to retrieve the camera footage once my business trip ended. Within a week, the investigator confirmed what I had already suspected. Josh was having an affair. His mistress was a younger woman named Sarah, who worked in the same company as us. I didn't know her personally, but I had heard she was popular among the male employees. She was 20 years old, attractive, and worked long hours like Josh. The investigator revealed that Josh had been lying about working late and spending weekends at the office. Instead, he was taking Sarah on dates and even bringing her into our home. Neighbors had seen them entering the apartment together while I was at work. They used the shower and other amenities in our home, which explained why things felt off before. When I first noticed the curling iron and hairdryer, it was because Sarah had used them. Josh probably got scared after I pointed out the changes, which is why they started meeting elsewhere for a while. But they couldn't hide forever. The investigator handed me a file filled with evidence, photos of them hugging in public, entering motels, and more. This was all I needed to confront Josh. I was furious, but I kept my cool. There was no way I was going to let them get away with this. A few days later, I returned home with a friend. She had agreed to help me with something, and I was finally ready to put an end to this. I hadn't told Josh I was coming home early from my trip. As I opened the door to our apartment, Josh wasn't there yet. My friend and I quickly took photos of all the evidence Sarah had left behind: clothes, toiletries, and makeup. I even found Sarah's shampoo and conditioner in the bathroom. My friend was horrified by the mess. We gathered everything we could and then retrieved the cameras I had set up. After that, we waited in the living room for Josh to come home. About 5 minutes later, I heard the sound of police sirens outside.
Is there an accident nearby?
We opened the front door to check, but before we could react, a woman's voice rang out.
This is the guy. She's the one spying on me.
The voice belonged to none other than Sarah, Josh's mistress. I couldn't believe my eyes as she pointed straight at me. Suddenly, a young police officer appeared, storming toward me.
You're under arrest for trespassing and illegal surveillance.
The officer was getting closer, but I quickly regained my composure. Wait a minute. Do you even know who owns this house? Before the officer could answer, Sarah butted in.
What are you talking about? This woman broke into my home.
She shot me a sharp look, then turned back to the officer.
I saw her place the cameras in here. Arrest her already.
She pointed accusingly at me, her voice rising in fake outrage. The officer didn't even pause to check if she was telling the truth.
You need to come with me.
Panic rose inside me, but I tried to stay calm. Wait, before you do anything, ask yourself this. Who owns this house? The officer hesitated for a moment, but Sarah jumped in again.
She's lying! This is my husband's house, and she's been stalking us.
Husband? I was beyond shocked. The officer looked at me skeptically, clearly not buying my side of the story.
Is this true? Are you trespassing?
Just then, Josh arrived, walking into the middle of the chaos.
What's going on here?
His face paled when he saw me standing with a police officer and Sarah. Josh, care to explain what's happening here? I kept my voice steady, but inside I was boiling with rage.
Rachel? This is,
He stammered, completely caught off guard.
She's been stalking us. I told you, Josh.
Sarah turned to Josh, expecting him to back her up, but he looked terrified. So, Josh, this woman claims she's your wife. Is that true? Josh froze, his eyes darting between me and Sarah. He was clearly panicking.
Yes, Josh, tell her. I'm your wife, right?
Josh was sweating now, but he didn't say anything. That's when I pulled out my phone. You might want to check this out before you make any more accusations. I showed the police officer the camera footage I had recorded. The video clearly showed Sarah and Josh in the apartment, with their voices talking about kicking me out.
Let's just get her out, Josh. I'll call the police, and we can say she broke in.
I don't know, Sarah. This feels wrong.
She's not even home. She'll never find out.
The police officer's face changed as he watched the video.
Ma'am, is this you in the video?
Sarah's confidence vanished.
I mean, it's not what it looks like.
The officer glanced at me and then back at Sarah.
I think you need to come with me.
Sarah looked at Josh, expecting him to defend her, but he stayed silent.
You too, sir. We need to get this all sorted at the station.
Josh finally spoke, his voice shaky.
Rachel, please. It's not what you think. Can't we just talk about this?
There's nothing left to talk about, Josh. It's over. I handed the police officer the evidence and watched as they led Josh and Sarah away. I felt a strange sense of relief. The nightmare was finally ending. A few days later, I officially filed for divorce. Josh tried to contact me several times, but I ignored every call and message. He sent me a long, desperate letter begging for another chance, but I knew better. My lawyer handled everything from that point on. The divorce went through quickly, and I received a settlement along with alimony. As for Sarah, she was fired from the company after word got out about the affair. Josh didn't fare much better. He ended up transferring to another city, but last I heard, things weren't going well for him either. I moved on with my life, feeling stronger than ever. I even started a new job in a different city, far away from the mess I'd left behind. The apartment, once the place of betrayal, became my sanctuary. I redecorated, got rid of every trace of Josh and Sarah, and started fresh. And as I looked out over the city from my new balcony, I realized something important. I don't need anyone to compete me. I'm enough. With a deep breath, I let go of the past and looked forward to a future filled with endless possibilities.